Hey guys, welcome back to Gaming for Immersion. My name is Michael, and this video is going to be a little bit of a nerdy discussion about game theory and the pros and cons of a single mod. It's not really a mod review, and it's mostly just me sharing my thoughts and asking you to share yours. If that's not something you're interested in, I wanted to warn you right away so as to not waste your time. Alright, so this is a topic I've talked about in brief in some of my videos before, namely the proper grand strategy mod list videos like the one I'll link in the description below. But in this video, I want to do a deeper dive, and I also want to open up the discussion to all of you. So I hope some of you add your own ideas in the comments section. It's fine to disagree with me or each other, just do it respectfully, eh? So the mod in question today is the minus 50% army movement mod that I believe is the single most impactful small mod, and by small I mean non-overhaul mod, in terms of how it changes your campaigns. Incidentally, for those of you who use SFO, you can accomplish the same thing with that mod's settings. So when I talk about how this mod affects the game, just know that I also mean using that particular SFO setting will do the same thing. I want to start with the side-by-side comparison of vanilla versus the mod, just so that we all know exactly what we're talking about. I'll use Emperor Karl Franz as our first example here. In the interest of time, I'm just going to go ahead and auto-resolve these battles, but obviously, if you fight them manually, you can win these without losing any units. In vanilla, at the very start, he can defeat his starting enemy's army and still have enough movement to take the first enemy settlement. This is pretty much the norm for most vanilla campaigns. But when you're using the mod, there's not enough movement to do both. You can defeat the starting enemy army, but you can't quite reach the settlement. Right away, it takes 2 turns to do what normally only takes 1. When you multiply this out over the course of an entire campaign, you begin to see that good old steamrolling dynamic of vanilla get considerably nerfed. And I realize this is subjective. Some people aren't going to like that, but again, it's something that I think improves the game, and we're going to get into a discussion about why. So this leads us into the big discussion. The main ways that reducing your army movement changes your campaign is fourfold. Number 1, there's more field battles relative to the number of settlement battles. This should be fairly self-explanatory, so I don't think I need to go into a lot of detail here. The only question is whether you think more field battles instead of settlement battles is a good thing. Obviously, this comes down to whether or not you like how CA has implemented minor settlement battles, which, of course, I think they're fine as a way to introduce some variation to your types of battles, but overall, I can't say I'm a huge fan. Number 2, there's more time for the AI or player to react to invasions. This point needs a little more discussion. You can certainly argue that this will make the game easier because the player is smarter about reacting than the AI is. I personally don't have a problem with that because the difficulty gets increased in other ways, so overall the game does not get easier. But subjectively, some players might think this gives too much of an advantage to the player. There will be less of the constant flipping of settlements from one faction to another. I've said before that because the game doesn't allow you to build your own strong points, the settlements themselves have to suffice for that, so it makes sense that they be not quite so very easy to conquer. Of course, this leads into the much longer conversation about ways to improve defending settlements that I've talked about in other videos, so I don't want to go down that rabbit hole here in this one. Also, having more time to react to defend settlements makes the game more realistic. One thing to keep in mind here, game rules are an abstraction of reality, and turn-based strategy games are always going to have an issue related to how much a team can get done before the other team gets their turn. It's just the nature of the beast. This is subjective, but it really doesn't make sense that an army can walk from being hidden in the fog of war all the way across one of your provinces to your settlement and attack it before you have a chance to so much as react. I think requiring 2 turns for that to happen rather than 1 is a pretty good compromise, but of course each of us may have a different threshold. Okay, number 3, this enables deeper strategy. I'm going to assume that we're all in agreement that most of the time, relentless aggression and expansion is the meta way to play vanilla Warhammer. There are a few exceptions. For example, I love that CA introduced the deep roads mechanic for dwarfs that allow you to play tall instead of wide. But for the most part, if you want the fastest and easiest way to achieve the rather bland, short, and long campaign victories, you'll want to blast through enemy settlements as quickly as possible, even at the price of ignoring your own defenses. One of the side effects of this is that usually the only truly competitive part of a campaign is at the beginning. Some players will be fine with this, and I know from the comments that some people get irrationally belligerent at the suggestion to slow the pace of the game. Whatever, it is what it is. I'll just say it's a waste to have all these super fun mid and late game units in a game where they don't roll off the assembly line in time to have a truly meaningful impact on the campaign. Now, admittedly, there are a lot of reasons why the game gets less competitive the further in you go, but slowing down the relentless conquests is one extremely easy way to improve the problem. But what do I mean by deeper strategy? If your game rewards relentless aggression, that's not very deep. But by creating more field battles relative to settlement conquests and allowing more time to react to offensives, the game allows for a wider range of strategies. There are other mods that contribute to this as well, which I get into in other videos. But the point is that a strategy game should have a time for aggression, a time for defense, a time for counterattacks, a time for decisions like whether to pursue a routed army or instead use your valuable movement to hit a settlement while it's vulnerable, thus potentially allowing the enemy army to get away or replenish. I could give more examples, but in the interest of time, I'll just say that basically having less movement means you can accomplish less in a single turn, which means you have to learn to prioritize objectives more so than in vanilla. Number 4, it makes the mid and late game more interesting. As mentioned, the slower you expand, the longer the challenge lasts. And the longer the challenge lasts, the more impactful your mid and late game units become. One important factor in this is that the AI cheats give it more of an advantage the longer it takes the player to build their irresistible empire. I will admit this is suboptimal. I wish the AI could just be smarter rather than getting a bunch of cheats, and maybe CA focusing on improving AI will genuinely help. But for now, the game is just not that hard, and giving the AI cheats extra time to compound does help stop the player from steamrolling. Alright, so now that we've covered the main ways this single mod impacts the campaign, let's talk about some important considerations. First of all, this is unbalanced. Some factions will be impacted more than others. For example, as I already mentioned, some factions can still reach the first enemy settlement and conquer it on turn 1, while others cannot. Some other examples are that dwarfs will have a little bit more trouble reaching enemies to fight as many battles as they can in vanilla, which means fewer settled grudges, which does impact your Age of Reckoning mechanic. Khorne likewise will have trouble reaching enemies to fight as many battles, which means your bloodletting meter will be harder to increase. However, in this case, the mod author compensates by doubling the length of time before the meter starts dropping from 2 turns to 4. So you get the idea how different factions are affected in different ways. But really the main variance in effect is that in some parts of the world, the settlements are closer together than in other parts. And in some parts of the world, because of terrain and other factors, your armies can just move farther in one turn than they can in other parts. The good news is, as you expand your empire, you'll encounter all of these variances, and the difference between factions begins to even out over time. But I want to finish the discussion about being unbalanced with a point I've said many times before. I don't think lack of balance is a bad thing. I think it's actually beneficial to make some factions harder than others, because sometimes you might be in the mood for a more chill campaign, and other times you might be looking for a real challenge. And it was always that way in the older historical Total War titles, so I got used to that dynamic a long time ago, and it's always been my preference. Another consideration, using a mod is always suboptimal. It's better for CA to fix the game than it is for us to have to use mods. First of all, it's a bit of a band-aid solution, and of course mods can break the game at any time, and mod authors are under no obligation to continue supporting their creation in perpetuity. I've used this particular mod for a very long time now. It seems pretty safe, but you never know. I'd love for CA to introduce a settings panel like SFO provides, but that's probably a pipe dream at this point. Although this is the single most impactful non-overhaul mod, I know it is not a cure-all. It does a lot, but it doesn't do everything by itself. It works best as part of a collection of mods to make other changes as well. I go into a lot more detail in my mod list videos, so I won't rehash everything here. And if you're using SFO, I do recommend changing other settings as well. Alright, I'll leave it there. I think that's enough. Hopefully you get the basic idea. But I want to hear back from you about your thoughts. What do you agree with, and what do you think I got wrong or overlooked? While we're on the topic, are these types of game discussion videos at all interesting or useful? Leave a like if you think so and think I should do more on similar topics, and do a dislike if you think this was a big old waste of time. It does help me know where I should focus my time and energy. And if you made it this far, please consider subscribing, because I'm still a small YouTuber just trying to add a little value to the community, and it really helps get these videos out to more of the right kind of people. As always, I really appreciate the support and feedback so many of you have given me already. And with that, thank you so much for watching and listening, and I will see you in the next video.